Hey, shalom, shalom, shalom. I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai Ba'Shem, Yahweh Kakadash, double honors to the elders and apostles of great millstone, many blessings and salutations to the hopeful elect house of David, the Bayaf Dawah on these epistles written for these last days. Shalom to the elect. Want to do a quick lesson, just really on the curses that's, that was on Jake and now it's hitting the society, you know what I'm saying? And you can see the fall from grace that, in real time, what America is receiving on a global stage. And also you seeing Jake being somewhat restored, mainly the elect, but, Jake is, looked at as, for what he is, right? A representation of the Most High. And that's a threat to this system. Okay. And now the Lord is starting to, send those curses on Babylon. Well, not starting, he already did, but now you're starting to see it manifest in many different ways. The recent closure of Spirit Airline. Businesses are going out of, just overnight, just going out of business. You don't see Toys R Us ain't around no more. Kmart ain't around no more. Sears, these are staples, Woolworth, these are staples that we grew up, thinking that these were going to be, continuing, from our childhood for those of us that are older millennials, so-called. And, you're seeing these things happening. It's just all a part of the Heavenly Father saying that he was going to send them curses, man. Okay. And them plagues. And these plagues are, they hidden. Okay, these store closures and things of that nature, man, it's all a part of the spirit, man. And for us to acknowledge it in videos like this and many other videos that brothers are doing, it's just a part of the prophecy. And people, I know it's a trigger word for a lot of Christians and people who don't understand the spirit, but the truth is the truth. The Heavenly Father is working, and you're in the front seat. You see, America is in that front seat. They're watching it up close. Okay, this is what happened to Egypt. Okay, just like in Egypt, he was, killing off the firstborn sons. Okay, and now we're back in Egypt again, and he's not even letting you have sons at all. Marriages are failing at an all-time high. Women are gallivanting around doing what the fuck they want to do, as evidence to this whole Megan Thee Stallion thing. She is a representation of today's modern woman. Be a whore, a complete whore for most of your life, and then one day you turn 30 and say, I want to settle down. Doesn't work that way. Okay. And it is also, that applies to Israel, now on the flip side is, the elect of the nation of Israel, reform from their ways, and they turned back completely wholly because they were complete. They were created to do that from the beginning, that they will reform from their ways and choose the Heavenly Father and the Son, Yahweh Shai. Okay. So this article I got pulled up from RT News, just one of those curses, those plagues that the Lord said he would give. And that Egypt is feeling the brunt, is feeling this. Because even if, let's just say America did make it. Let's just say none of this, the scriptures, we know that's not true, but let's just say the scriptures wasn't really speaking about America, right? Well, you still have to account for the low birth rates, because going forward, you have more old people in a country and you don't have enough young, spry, population to support the older generation. Now you creating an imbalance and you're creating problems, okay, that cannot withstand. Okay, there's a study that was out a few years back, I want to say around 2022, 2023, that basically stated that by 2030, half the population of women will be single. Half. And ain't no man in the picture. Guess what? They got to work, you know? And it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get worse. So let's read a little bit of this article. It says U.S. facing historic low birth rates. And for this to make it into an article, this is at least 3 or 4, maybe 5 years already past the point of return. You think the Heavenly Father, the Heavenly Father is the creator of all things. If he wanted the birth rate to be substantial or raised back up or neutralized, the Heavenly Father has that power. And the fact that he's doing this is showing you that America is where it's going is not sustainable. It's just not. It's just not. It says CDC data shows fertility has fallen below even Depression era levels. Wow. Raising fresh questions about family stability and long-term decline, man. It's expensive as shit to have children now, man. Esau is so against life that he dedicated it. Well, look at these look at these the children. When you do have children, what is Esau doing? Esau is incentivizing sickos like Jeffrey Epstein, and his friends and cohorts to go around, abuse children. Okay. And you look around and and then you're thinking as a man or a woman, like, man, do I want to bring my children up in a society like this? Knowing full well what I'm seeing. Okay. And you got to understand that the Heavenly Father see all this. And he's like, man, look, do away with it. This is Wisdom of Solomon 12:1. It says, for thine incorruptible spirit is in all things. Right? So the Heavenly Father's spirit is in all things. And he has his spirit in the fact that women, want to be complete whores. He's allowing this. He's also allowing men, to be, sexless. Okay. Not to, to be focused on working. Pretty much your whole life is work. You're just working a job, man. Okay. For $1 that is not stretching enough. So the Lord's Spirit is in all these things, man, as plagues given unto you as punishment for your haughtiness through the entire earth. America represents whoredom on a grand stage, man. Okay? They export whoredom. They use it as a selling mechanism. Well, look, your woman could be a whore just like us. Your children can grow up, spineless. And verse 2, it says, therefore chasteneth thou them by little that offend, and warnest them by putting them in remembrance wherein they have offended, that leaving their wickedness they may believe on thee, O Lord Yahweh Shema Shah. Yeah. And it's something to the elect. The elect are the only ones. Because always remember, it is written that the elect at some point in their journey, each and every one of them, of the 1/3, are going to wake up. They're going to see this for what it truly is. And they're going to turn back to the righteous ways through the Spirit. Okay. Verse 3, it says, for it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers, both those old inhabitants of thy holy land. That's right. So when you see things like this playing out on a global stage, like America having historic low birth rates, you understand the Heavenly Father is the one that triggered this, because he wanted to prove a point. Okay, the Heavenly Father wanted to prove a point, man. All right, because He's the one that creates things, and and when somebody has to go to the spirit world, He's the one that makes that happen. Okay. Deuteronomy 32 and 39. See now that even I am He, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. So if there's low birth rates, it's because the Heavenly Father wanted that to happen. Okay? And He's pumping it out in the media. Okay? Women are being whores to the same dude. The same dudes are hitting pretty much everybody. You know what I'm saying? And anyway, it says, even I am He, and there is no God with me. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. Neither is there any that can deliver out of my hand. That's right. So the Heavenly Father is the one that controls all of it. And if your society, which by the way is unsustainable, if your society has the low birth rate that it has now, is because the Heavenly Father looks at you and He doesn't think, you're redeemable. Not that America ever be set up to be redeemable. It was more like this was a prison sentence for the nation of Israel, man. This is our prison sentence. We were sentenced to serve out a day, half a day, all right, according to the Lord's time, which 1,000 years with the Lord is one day. So we were sentenced to half a day in prison with the worst people on planet Earth as our rulership. The Heavenly Father sentenced us to prison in this hellhole, and our time's almost up. Okay? Our time's almost up. Daniel 4:17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and by the demand by the Holy One of the Holy. This matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever He will, and setteth over it the basis of men. So when you see headlines like this, don't be startled. It's all a part of the plagues. Okay? This is all a part of the plagues. In the article, it says, according to vital statistics data published in April by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the birth rate in the United States has reached a new record low. In 2025, there were 53.1 births per 1,000 women of childbearing age 15 to 44. Slovakia. Slovakia. I'm texting someone right now. Yeah. All right. Anyway, so it's like what I was saying. Childbearing age 15 to 44. Okay. And once you get past 34, once you get to 35, you're dealing with, significant health risk for the baby being born healthy. Um, and that was never a thing in a prosperous society for a woman to get to 35, unless she was, something happened or, whatever, if the Lord didn't want it like that. But usually for a healthy society, she would have already had, 3, 4, 5 children by 20. That's usually how it went in the ancient world. Now, I know and understand that we're in the new world now, but for a healthy society, this was a thing. And this society promotes, women, getting married, by the age of 30. Okay. Or at the, past the age of 30, or waiting to 30 and then looking for a man, and so, this is unsustainable. It was never going to sustain. And it's a part of the plagues because of the haughtiness of Babylon the Great. It says in the U.S., 1.3% lower than 2024 and 23% lower than in 2007. Wow. It says the decline in birth rates reflects the impact of decades of social change that have undermined the institution of American family. Because it's not about family. It's about working you to death, literally. And even if you did have children, you don't have no time to spend with them because you're always at work. And when you ain't at work, you're trying to get home to get some sleep. Okay? So in that time, who's raising the children? Esau. Most of your children are in schools. I call them little concentration camps. And they're learning how to be an Edomite. It says today the total number of births per year is far lower than in earlier periods when the U.S. population was much smaller. For example, in 1961, 4.3 million children were born when the U.S. population stood at 184 million. Look how much this society has grown. It was 184 million people in 1961. We're at 380 something now. And this is wow. That means judgment coming. That's usually what that means. Judgment is coming. And I'm talking about the intercontinental ballistic missiles. It's going to take out all three, or how many of this going to be, and the elect are going to be saved. Okay. It says in 2025, it says only 3.6 million children were born across the entire country, even though the population now stands at 342 million. It says the current birth rates are even lower than during the Great Depression, when births fell to 75.8 births per 1,000 women in 1936. It says the fundamental decline in fertility in American society began in the 1960s following the sexual revolution. Exactly. It says in the 1990s and the early 2000s, when the U.S. reached the peak of its geopolitical power, the country experienced some growth in birth rates. But in 2006 onward, a new wave of decline began, one that is now unfolding in parallel with a rapid drop in share of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, whatever the fuck that means. It says in the U.S. population. Why is this happening? Well, obviously the Heavenly Father. He wants the plagues of Esau to reach to a point where it's unsustainable. Okay? This is Isaiah 19:2. It says, and I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight everyone against his brother, and everyone against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom, right? So everybody's at each other's necks. You got women right now. That gender war thing is a real thing online. That's a real thing. And it's pushing into real life. Women don't trust men. Men don't trust women. This whole think pieces out here about how men ain't shit, never will be shit, but you still laying up with them. The whoredom of America is being pushed globally, and the other countries are seeing this and like, I don't want that shit in my society. Okay? Verse 3, it says, and the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to their idols. All right. All right, like they're seeking these. You got women online literally throwing spells, being witches in real life, right there out in open, casting spells, doing witchcraft online, man. I don't have TikTok, so I don't know, but I've heard of this thing called witch talk. This place got to go. Okay, it says, and they shall seek to their idols, and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits. It says, and to the wizards, and the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord Yahweh Shemashai, the Lord Yahweh of hosts. And the water shall fail from the sea, and the river shall be wasted and dried up. Woo. He giving them plagues. And you can pretend like this ain't going on, but it's going on. Back in the article, it says, and an answer can be found in RT's global survey, the Social Well-Being Index. It says, while the West compares who has more money and greater consumption, the opportunities we measure what truly matters for the survival and flourishing of nations. Everybody else can see the fall, but ignorant 2/3 niggas, all right, I'm talking about of all the tribes, of all 12 tribes, they just pretend none of this is going on. The society is collapsing, literally. You're like that meme with the dog in the burning house with his eyes blinking and shit. Everything's fine. The house is fucking trembling from the fire. It says, while the West compares who has more money and greater consumption opportunities, we measure what truly matters for the survival and flourishing of nations, the ability to produce life birth rates, the preservation of life, infant mortality, longevity, homicide mortality, and the minimization of oppression, the level of inequality between rich and poor, and children's education. As a result, the great Western powers did not even make the top 20 in the SWI rankings. France ranked 29th, Germany 41st, the US 48th, and the UK 53rd, man. What is it? What is the correlation between all those countries? Those are all Edomite man countries. Modeled after the Roman Empire. All of them. With America being the biggest. And these curses are hidden so hard that they're now having to figure out how to get around this. And there's no way. You can't. Okay? This is Wisdom of Solomon 12:4. This is whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft and wicked sacrifices, man. This is speaking on Israel, but mainly, really all of America, man. And the influence that it has throughout the entire earth through the Roman Empire. That's why we always address the Roman Empire, because that's the time we're in. We're in the second leg of the Roman Empire. This is the type of shit they promoted back then during the ancient Roman Empire, but now we're in the new Roman Empire. They're pushing the same energy. And look what it's leading to. The same results as ancient Rome. Okay. Let me read that again. Wisdom of Solomon 12:4. Whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft and wicked sacrifices. You want to want you understand why you have low birth rates is because of the works that you do, seen by the Most High on every level. And it starts with the top. Whatever your king does is what you'll do. If your king is a complete debaucherous being, guess what his servant gonna be? The same thing. Okay. Verse 5, it says, and also those merciless murderers of children and devourers of man's flesh and feast of blood, with their priest out of the midst of their adulterous crew, and the parents that killed with their own hands souls destitute of help, man. The Lord sees all this and he's increasing the plagues. And the Lord ain't got no mercy. Only for the elect. Everyone else catching complete hell out here. Okay. It says that the land which thou esteemest above all other might receive a worthy colony of the Most High's children. Right. This place is getting faded to black slowly, and then the Lord's going to close the curtain with them intercontinental ballistic missiles. Nevertheless, even those thou sparest as men and didst send wasp, it says, forerunners of thine host, to destroy them by little and little. This is a part of that. He's increasing those plagues to the point where it's unrecognizable. It's unrecognizable. He's closing the curtain on this place, man. You've had your time. The late 60s was about the best you could make it here in America. And from there, it's been terrible. And I ain't talking about for Israel, because Israel always been catching hell. But I'm talking about for you Edomites in particular. The 60s was about the best. The 50s and the 60s was about the best you was going to get in America. That's it. Now comes the fall. So I want to play this video real quickly. We'll get on out of here. Don't have to make a long lesson. But through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema, I pray this is edifying. I want to give all praises. But also, let me play this video. Also, I need to say, I pray that this lesson was edifying. All right. Fair use, YouTube, fair use.
Fundamentally, it's the drop in marriage rates, right? Married people maintain a fertility rate that's close to 1990s levels. The issue is that the number of people getting married are about a third less than it was in the year 2000. That is the biggest explanation for the decline in birth rates. If we stay at our current fertility rate, about 1.6, just under it, the CDC had new data out showing it was at 1.57 births per woman. If we stayed at that level without any immigration for 50 years, our population would drop by as much as 40%. So this is it's a big factor.
That is stunning.
JP, we here at This Guest are batting 1,000 when it comes to wonderful, happy marriages. What is unappealing about marriage to people these days?
I think a lot of it is the messages from our elite, because the overall science continues to show that marriage leads to happier lives. The happiest people in America are married people with kids. It's by a large margin. Those who report having the most fulfilled lives are married people, and the healthiest people, those both healthy in terms of mental health, lowest levels of loneliness, lowest levels of suicidal ideation, lowest levels of victimhood to violence of any sort. All of that is connected to marriage. In fact, there's a new study out of the University of Miami that shows that even cancer is significantly related to marriage. That actually, if you're a man who's never married, you're north of 70% more likely to have been diagnosed with cancer of any sort. And if you're a woman, you're about 85% more likely to have been diagnosed with cancer. That's a huge study, over 4 million people, 12-year study. And so just the overwhelming avalanche of data says marriage is great. It's great for young people. Great for young people in terms of those in their mid-20s. If you get married, you're more likely to thrive than if you get married later in life.
Amazing. All right, so 111 million single adults above the age of 18 are in the United States. That's about 1 in 3. It's actually quite remarkable. That jump, have we just made being single more attractive? One of the things I notice is that this trend line starts right around the time that social media starts to grow onto the scene. Have we created some sort of phenomenon through social media and digitalization that being single is cooler than being married?
It precedes. Social media has amplified the message. Think about, Sex and the City, Seinfeld,
Yeah.
The big stories of the 1990s sitcoms heavily championed the idea of, friends being single deeper into life was celebrated. And the reality is a lot of people aren't, as a consequence of those messages that we've inculcated into our culture, into our young people, they're not being as intentional as they should be in their 20s. Okay. And many people, if you go to college, while college grads are more likely to end up married than non-college grads, many college grads are waiting far too long to get married. And, the best time frequently for young people to meet one another and have the time to date is actually in college. I tell young people, you don't need to marry somebody you meet in college, but you shouldn't go on to college with with setting up your own decision ahead of time that you're not going to meet your spouse. Okay. You're never going to have a time in your life where you're going to be surrounded by more people your age with the time to date them and to find people who share your values, right? And oftentimes parents are subtly reinforcing the message of the zeitgeist that what you should do is wait till you get your degree, get an advanced degree, get a career, get a lot of income going, and then look around. And what we're finding for a lot of young people, that delayed marriage means many people aren't able to find a spouse. And so I think a big thing is for parents to push back on the message that our culture is giving, help their young people, their kids, to be intentional in their 20s. Don't be reckless in your relationships, okay? And be clear, setting clear parameters for what your relationship means. And if you're moving towards a marriage that is committed, or a relationship that's committed, you want to be clear about that from early in the game.
So yeah, hey man, it's too late, way too late, and now here we are, and it's gonna get worse. It's gonna get worse. For now, for the elect, it's getting better because now justice has arrived, and we get to see how the Heavenly Father doles out justice righteously. I want to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Ba'Shem Ashai, Ba'Shem Maharakah Kadash, Shalom to the elect.